Hi, everybody. This is Louis again from the Gypsy Homestead. Today's big adventure, and I'm dressed for it, as you can see, is weeding the garden. So what I'm going to do is basically show you how the woven weed fabric make the whole job a lot easier. I still have to dress as if I'm going to be digging around, but at the same time, I think you'll find that I can get through a lot more in a very short period of time. Yep, so I'll hang on, be right back. The next thing I'm going to tackle is this row, these rows here on my right-hand side. These were supposed to be soybeans. Now, I'm not sure why, but it could be that the soybeans I planted were just not good, but they did not come up. So I will effectively be taking everything out of this row, these two rows, and I'll go back and I'll replant soybeans. Not a problem this time of year. It's only the middle of June. Lots of time to come back still. Beans are very quick, so that's what I'll be doing here. But first of all, I have to make place for them. So I'll be cleaning this out as well. So as I've gone through, I've left these plants in. In case you're wondering, I don't remember where I read it, but I believe this to be a beneficial term. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it inside later on and do the research. I have a couple of herbalist friends, so I'll just ask them. But it definitely does ring a bell. So let's go leave 4 or 5 plants that are in there, and then move on. It is the next day, and of course it's hotter than even yesterday was, and it's only going to get worse. But I am trying a different microphone because there's a lot more wind today than there was yesterday. Anyway, so this is what this garden looks like after it's been weeded. It's not the last time I'm going to weed it. There's still quite a bit more to do. But for now, this is what I'm going to be working with. So I'll just show you very quickly what that's going to look like. This first row here, it is kale. I'm not sure if I mentioned that yesterday or not. The next row after that is lima beans, and green beans, and yellow beans, as I mentioned yesterday. That area in the middle where there's holes, but there's nothing coming up. And since that didn't work out, I'll be replanting those probably today. So my next task will be to move on to the second garden, and I'll be showing you that today. While I have you here around what I like to refer to as the primary hoop, you'll see that there are the green vines that you see there are actually grapes. And it's taken about 3 years, but they're finally catching on. I expect to get some grapes on them this year. The first one on the right actually has at least 2 or 3 bunches on them. Hopefully I'll be able to show you those when they're actually fully grown and ready to pick. Now, if you go beyond the strawberry plants, on the very end, I'll try and zoom in on that, you'll see 2 gray containers. Those containers have onions, which I planted along this fence, which I'm using as a trellis, by the way. I have my Roma tomatoes. I planted all of these tomatoes from seed. And this is the first year I was actually successful in growing Roma tomatoes indoors. I didn't have to buy any supplemental tomatoes. They're doing well. They are slow to grow, but then again, weather has not been ideal. But now we had the huge rains, and we're going to have a major heat wave for the next 3 days. Matter of fact, Thursday is forecast to be the hottest day of the year. The chickens will be hiding under various tarps that they have, and they will also be in their chicken house. All right, so you've got the tomatoes, you've got the zucchinis right next door. After that, you've got the baby melons, and last but not least, it's a toss-up. There's a bit of everything. There's some squash, and there's giant pumpkins. That's the last row before the white boxes. Now, coming over to the other side, I have my peppers. There's everything from bell peppers to hot peppers, to just plain banana peppers in this area. On the bottom left-hand side, those are eggplant. So looking forward to seeing how that comes up. The angel in the middle was my 40th birthday present. She's been with me ever since and has followed me from house to house to house. And her place is in the garden. What you see on the left-hand side is my horseradish, which has started with a small root that I got from a friend and now has grown into an absolutely incredible amount of horseradish. I harvest more horseradish than I can use, and I've actually dug up some of it, given it away already. So that's what's left so far. That's asparagus. I left the asparagus to go to seed. Next to the asparagus, there's some rhubarb that you will not be able to see. It's not very large. What I do want to show you is my garlic. These are garlic bulbs that I actually grew last year and let them dry, and I replanted in October of last year, and they've all started to come up. I must have, I think, a success rate of about 90%. Now, see that curly Q kind of thing coming out of one of the garlics? That is a garlic scape. And a garlic scape is one of the things that's thrown off by hardneck garlic, which is basically, there are two types, well, there's several types of garlic, but the ones I plant are hardneck garlic. And I use those, I cut them off, because if you don't cut them off, then the garlic root itself stops growing. So you cut those off, and you can make those into a really nice pesto, garlic pesto. And that's usually what I end up doing. Or I'll freeze it, and I will use it in a dish of some sort. I'll use it like I would any other garlic, a fine chop, and throw it in a pan. So that's what those are. And I'll be harvesting those probably when it cools down a little bit later on. So this is just basically a brief moment with the chickens. As you can see, the ladies are hiding under the shade. Again, when it gets too hot for them, and that'll probably be on Thursday, I imagine that they will probably be going into the chicken house. But for the moment, the door is open now. They've got big enough so that they can wander around. Although yesterday I did find one outside of the electric fence. If they sense any kind of danger from an aerial predator, they can run into here and they will probably be safe. So now I am going to start weeding. But again, it is incredibly hot here right now with a humidex of 35 degrees Celsius. So not going to take any chances of getting heat stroke. But I will at least try clear up a couple of rows. There's one thing I did want to mention, though, about weeding in general, especially when you're weeding in something as dense as this, with plants as small as this. Let's say, for example, I recognize it as a pepper plant. So I have to be extra careful not pull it out. That's cauliflower. But if you're not looking close, it's just as liable to pull the whole thing out. So now what I have to do is I have to carefully go in, pull the weeds around it, make sure I'm not pulling any of the cauliflower with it. Which I almost did this, for example. I've got 2 here. I don't need 2 here. Am I going to throw one away? I'm going to move it. So take this one, press it back down in the earth. I come over here in an empty spot and I replant this one. Here's another pepper plant. Now, it's easy. Well, if you're not used to it, it's easy to think that those flowers are actually part of the pepper plant, but they're not. They are a separate weed. So you take whatever there is, not a pepper plant, pull it out and get rid of it. Let's go in here again. Okay, more cauliflower. And I pulled it out by accident. Means I got to plant it again. Well, that's not a horrible thing since there's two already. So get rid of this. Let's dig another hole here. Press cauliflower in. Take some of this earth, prop it up, just to make sure that it's covered. I'll be watering tonight, so that'll get watered in. As you can see, the first rows of peppers and the eggplant are cleaned out. Now what I've got to do is and also I should have mentioned the cauliflower. Now what's next is the next row of peppers, and then after I'm finished with that, I'm going with the Roma tomatoes. So I'm going to be starting over here. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this and I'm going to show you the results rather than make you watch the whole thing. I just want to pop in for a second. As you can see, there are peppers in this row. I've cleaned out the row and everything. But in between these particular two peppers, and actually several of them, I found a tomato plant. Now, I did not plant that. It's actually very likely a cherry tomato that decided to grow there by itself, often referred to as a volunteer. So we'll see what it is. And in the meantime, I'm not going to move it. I'm going to move on to clean out the spinach and the cauliflower. And I can already tell there's a lot more volunteers that I'm going to have to either relocate or come up with some other idea. Both sides of the trellis, as I'm using it, are cleaned out. I've got all my tomatoes are in. I've also got marigolds will help to keep away some bugs that attack tomato plants. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll plant them next to or with the tomatoes. Start with the zucchini, and then I will move on to the baby melons. Baby melons will be in there as well. So that's the area where the chair is located, and that's a tomorrow job. I think I've done enough for today. I don't want to overexert in this heat. And so I'm going to call this a day. I'll bring you back in tomorrow when we finish this, and then we'll clean up the strawberries. There's a lot of extra stuff in there. So the sooner I pull those out, compost them, the better. This is the before. I will show you the after. But again, I will spare you having to watch me do it because it's about as exciting as watching paint dry. Some plants are harder to weed than others. I know it's very difficult to see. For example, in this one, where I've got my baby watermelons, you've got the baby watermelon surrounded by grass, surrounded by plantain. So you literally have to go in there, pick out individually all the different pieces to make sure that you take out the watermelon. And that can be quite the challenge. So just be very careful to pull out everything that's not watermelon. That is what takes the time. It's not difficult. It just takes time. All right, then. So what I've done now is I've cleared out everything around the baby watermelons. I came to the sad conclusion that none of my giant pumpkins came up. So what I'm probably going to end up doing is planting either, and the reason they didn't come up was the seeds may not be good, but I do have some cantaloupe seeds that I can plant. I may put those in. So I've got at least one row available for that. The zucchinis are coming along wonderfully. The next big task is to A, clean up all the grass that I've pulled out, which is what you see lying on the ground, and then B, weeding out the strawberries. Once the strawberries are weeded, then I can actually call it a day. It won't be that difficult. There won't be that many to do. I think there's 14 boxes in all, and the weeds are very small. So I'll be able to go through each box fairly quickly. These are lamb's quarters, and it's actually edible. Makes a good addition to a salad. We go quite a bit here. Okay, so this is the last box of strawberries I have to weed. Turned out to be a little bit more of a task than I thought, mostly because I had to be extra careful not to pull out strawberry plants because they were so shallow. Later on, when these get to be more established, then it won't be as much of an issue because they won't come up as easily. But for now, they come up a little too easily. So what I've got to do is be prepared to replant them immediately. They'll get watered again, more than likely this evening or tomorrow before it gets hot again, and that'll help them settle in again. But what I thought was going to be an easy task took a little longer than I expected. This is an easy one, by the way. The others have been more of a challenge. Now, what you saw me do there was take a look. That root is definitely a strawberry root, as is this one, but there's nothing on it. But there is a great deal of these small, shallow weeds, and we have a lot of these. And I know that I've discussed this before. These are lamb's quarters, and it's actually edible. Makes a good addition to a salad. So with that, the weeding's done. Okay, now that the weeding's done, it's time to call it a night. And I want to thank everybody for stopping by. Again, if you don't mind, if you enjoyed the video, you can like it for us, share it, tell your friends about the site, and we'd really appreciate it. In any case, thanks again. My name is Louis from Blue Gypsy Homestead, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. All the best. Bye-bye.